What are we? It's one of the hardest questions to ask in a relationship. Not because you don't care, but because once you ask it, you can't unknow the answer. You think about bringing it up while you're walking home together, or when you're staring at your phone, rereading a message that didn't quite land the way you hoped, or maybe late at night when your mind starts replaying things. What are we? Is this actually going somewhere? You tell yourself it's too soon. You don't want to make things awkward. And you think things are fine the way they are. So why risk changing the vibe? So you don't ask, and nothing really bad happens. They still text, and you still see each other. It's still fun, and it still feels real. From the outside, it looks like something is happening. But inside, you don't feel settled at all. You notice yourself paying closer attention to small things that shouldn't matter, but suddenly do. You replay conversations, not because anything went wrong, but because you're trying to understand where you stand and what they're thinking. And you tell yourself this is just being patient and emotionally mature. But here's the part most people miss. This isn't patience. It's what happens when a relationship has no definition. When nothing is named, you end up filling in the gaps yourself. You start watching for signs and looking for reassurance. Not because something is wrong with you, but because uncertainty makes people work harder for clarity. And ambiguity can actually feel safer than honesty, because it can be used to delay loss. But it also delays alignment. And the longer alignment is delayed, the harder it becomes to leave. Not because things are good, but because you've already invested so much emotional energy trying to interpret what's happening. In modern dating, ambiguity often looks like flexibility or openness. But emotionally, it creates a low-level tension that never quite settles. You're connected, but not anchored. Involved, but unsure. And close, but without context. And that has a cost. Not defining a relationship doesn't protect you from pain. It just spreads it out over time. Instead of one clear moment of truth, you get weeks or months of second-guessing yourself. You start wondering if you're reading too much into things, or not enough. Whether you're asking for clarity too soon, or waiting too long. This is where people start telling themselves stories. I don't want to pressure them. I don't want to be needy. Or the classic, I'm not someone who needs labels. On the surface, those stories sound mature and sounds aware. They even sound generous. But notice who benefits from them. It's rarely the person carrying the uncertainty. And without realizing it, one person ends up doing most of the emotional labor of the ambiguity, while the other gets to stay comfortable inside it. This is why defining a relationship has been framed as demanding or intense. Because the person who wants clarity is usually the person with more at stake. They're the one who needs orientation. And needing orientation has somehow been confused with being difficult. But wanting to know where you stand isn't control. It's self-respect. Defining a relationship isn't about locking someone in. It's about asking whether you're actually walking in the same direction. If you're honest, you probably already know what answer you're afraid of hearing. And that fear is likely telling you more than the silence ever has. Most people aren't scared of the conversation itself. They're scared of what the conversation might reveal. They're scared of hearing that the other person doesn't want the same thing, isn't in the same place, or doesn't see this going further. Because clarity doesn't just tell you who the other person is. It tells you what you'll have to do next. And staying ambiguous often feels easier, because it postpones that choice. You don't have to decide whether to stay or leave. You can just keep going and hope things eventually resolve on their own. Sometimes they do, but often they don't. And when they don't, people look back and realize they were living in limbo far longer than they needed to. Not because they were weak, but because uncertainty felt less frightening than finality. Here's the part no one explains. Defining a relationship isn't about certainty. It's about honesty. It's about saying, this is where I am, and being willing to see whether the other person is there too. That doesn't guarantee a good outcome, but it does guarantee clarity. And clarity, even when it hurts, tends to heal faster than prolonged confusion. A lot of people don't avoid defining relationships because they don't care. They avoid it because clarity would force them to choose. And choosing means giving something up. A version of the relationship, an imagined future, or the hope that things will change on their own. If asking, what are we, feels terrifying, it might not be because you're asking for too much. It might be because you've learned to prioritize keeping the connection over being truthful about what you need. If you need permission to want clarity, this is it. You're not wrong for wanting definition. You're not intense for wanting to know where something is going. And you're not failing at modern dating because you struggle with ambiguity. You're responding to the reality that relationships don't thrive in permanent uncertainty. Defining a relationship isn't about forcing an outcome. It's about refusing to live without one. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to wait and see. It's to ask the question that tells you whether waiting is actually worth it. You've been watching The Soft Skills. Like and subscribe for more thoughtful takes on relationships, clarity, and self-trust.